Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. Today we're talking about public school funding in Arizona. Joining me to tell us more about this is the Center Square's education reporter Esther Wickham. Esther, some school districts sued the state of Arizona for not providing adequate funding. Before we get into the verdict, could you just lay out what the case was?
Yeah, thanks, Eliana, for having me. The case titled Glendale Elementary School District versus State of Arizona was a lawsuit actually filed back in 2017. So, this is almost an 8 year dispute, kind of going back and forth. The case also had four other school districts: Glendale, Crane, Chino Valley, and Elfrida Elementary School District, along with three organizations. So, the Arizona School Boards Association, Education Association, and school administrators. And they all came together in a lawsuit against lawmakers in the state of Arizona, suing them and saying that, they have failed to uphold the state constitution, the Arizona Constitution, that essentially requires and makes these lawmakers obligated to provide not just any kind of funding, but quote unquote adequate funding for public schools. Arizona is known to be a desert state. It is known to have very high temperatures, especially in the summer months and going through the fall, and really all year round. It's a very hot state. Going upwards of 100 degrees. And a lot of teachers and students have found that these buildings are not adequately funded. They don't have the right, infrastructure. They're not being, increased maintenance. That's not a thing, or they don't have enough money for it. And these students and these teachers can't really be in that kind of environment when trying to teach and trying to learn. So that was just one aspect of the case. And teachers and these school districts and these organizations came together and said, we need to stop this. We need the funding. Lawmakers are not giving us this funding, and so we need this kind of money to not only fix just the actual buildings for when it gets super hot, but also if there's leaks, if it rains, if there's any kind of cracks or bugs in the classroom. They need to have adequate funding, a part of their budget, to fix and maintain their public school buildings.
So then, can you tell us about the verdict and what the judge had to say?
Yeah, so after many, many years of this was, as I said, filed back in 2017, but there was a lot of pushback. And finally, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Dwayne Fox took this case, and he finally ruled on it in favor of these school districts, finding that Arizona lawmakers have actually, in fact, violated constitutional requirement to fund public schools. This was a 114-page decision, so it was not something lightly made. Back in August, on August 11th, Judge Fox kind of details that these schools did not even meet the minimum requirements in providing adequate school equipment for these building repairs. And according to the Constitution, he cites that the legislature is required to organize and fund, quote unquote, general and uniform public school systems. So he's saying, that they have failed to uphold the Arizona Constitution, and they actually do have an obligation to provide funding for these schools so that they can maintain these schools for these children to learn and have a safe environment to learn in.
And how have the people on different sides of this issue responded to the decision?
Yeah, so starting off with, these four school districts and a couple organizations, I got multiple different quotes from all these organizations, but they all are essentially saying the same thing. They are excited about this. They think this is a massive victory for the school districts, just for education as a whole within the state of Arizona. And one superintendent, Cinda Segota Jones, in a press release, she said, quote, it affirms what educators, families, and communities have long known, that every child deserves to learn in a safe, well-maintained, and well-equipped school. And she goes on to say she's grateful to the court for recognizing the importance of equitable investments in our children's education. And this is something that a lot of the other, Arizona Education Association and boards of education associations state. These students were in environments that, as I said, couldn't withstand 100-degree weather conditions, on top of preventing exposure to mold or asbestos. These are toxic things to be exposed to when you go to school, and that's not necessarily something that these lawmakers wanted. One Arizona state senator, Eva Diaz, she's a Democrat on the Senate Education Committee, she said that this ruling has been brought on because of these fearless school districts and these educators who have demonstrated that these Republican leaderships have actually failed to ensure that students have a safe environment to learn in. So this is something back where they're actually blaming Republican lawmakers for this happening, for these environments that have been unsafe. And so they think that by passing this law, this provides accountability and insurance that these Republican lawmakers will be able to follow through and fund these school districts and these students' education so that they can have a safe environment. Going a little bit further down, when I talked to a spokesperson for Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs' office, she said that over the past 3 years, this has been a huge initiative that Governor Hobbs has prioritized in education. And as of now, she's secured almost $1 billion to build school facilities and provide, this quality of learning environment. And so this is just an added benefit and an added bonus. Now the judge has ruled in favor of these school districts, but we saw that Governor Hobbs here, kind of took it upon herself with her team to start raising money and to start raising awareness that, this money needs to go towards these school systems in this environment. So that was something that she sees, needs to be taken seriously. That was stated by her press secretary, Liliana Soto, that the state's constitutional obligation regarding capital funding, has been told by the legislature, but they haven't really done anything. And so we kind of took the opportunity to take some steps. And now it's a requirement, for these lawmakers and for the legislature to get on it and to start funding these school buildings and this maintenance.
And what did Republicans have to say in response to this?
Yeah, so obviously, big pushback. They have, obviously been fighting this for the past 8 years. When talking to the Senate President Warren Peterson, who's a Republican in Arizona, talking to a spokesperson, they confirmed that they will appeal the decision. So their goal is to appeal the decision, to push back against this. And when going a little bit deeper into it, to understand, why is this actually a thing that they want to push back on? They said that according to the Arizona Constitution, if you actually look at it, they stated that it actually doesn't require funding for school systems and expenses. And the attorney for the legislature said that this idea that the court in passing, this case, has the power to tell lawmakers what the state is expected to fund just simply isn't true. And so they think in turn this is somewhat unconstitutional, and they think that this invades the exclusive power that the legislature has. According to the lawyer that represented the Republican lawmakers, William Richards, he states that these matters that invade the exclusive power of the legislator and therefore do not create a viable claim mover which the court may assume jurisdiction. So essentially, he's just stating that, this evades the power of the legislator, and the court simply doesn't have that ability to override the jurisdiction for the legislature and for these Republican lawmakers. And obviously, the plaintiffs for this case don't believe that this is true. And so their response, kind of in that statement, the executive director of the Arizona Center for Law in the Public Interest, Danny Adelman, who represented the plaintiffs, said that they can appeal, but evidence is still evidence, and they believe the law is the law. And if the Republican lawmakers try to appeal, it's just going to make them look bad. So there's a lot of still debate going back and forth from it, but students are still able and ready to learn in these facilities. It's just a matter of if they're actually going to be able to see that money come through and that funding to come through, so that they are not in these harmful environments as these school districts and organizations have stated, because they ultimately just want a healthy and safe environment for these kids. But there's going to be a couple loopholes I think they have to jump through before we get to the finish line.
Well, Esther, thank you for your insights on this story. You can read this story and other stories from Esther at thecentersquare.com.